Okay, let's see. Now, I think I'm live on 2. Let's see if I can make it a 3 for 3. Here we go. And on YouTube, I'm definitely live. On Facebook, it appears to be live. Great. And now and on Instagram, now live as well. Hurrah. Hello, you. And you know what? Rookie error. I meant to copy over. I meant to copy over the questions I had from you. And silly, they're on the phone, and the phone is for my live on Instagram. So I'm very, very sorry that I didn't copy them over. I will see if I can figure them out and get through the questions as well, because it went out for you. Let me see. So Instagram, hopefully Instagram will let me in on my computer so that I can. It was very nice to sort of talk about what's going on. And one of the things that I said was we're aware of a couple of tech issues, for some information of their account. Now we are working on that, and we're going to get it figured out very, very soon. So so it is not the end of the world. Just wanted to let you all know if any of you have tried that and you didn't see that live. The other thing I said is that do make sure you share anything about the conference with other people who are interested in languages, language learning. They don't have to be polyglots. Anyone and everyone who loves language and who is nice, comes with a smile and wants to make friends. And that's basically all we look for at the Polyglot Conference. And of course, this year, there's no ticket price. It's open to anyone and everyone who wants to come. So yeah, feel free to share polyglotconference.com website with people so they can sign up and join in the forum and talk to people. By next Sunday, we should have the issue for some of the people who are having difficulties resolved, and it will be ready for everyone to join in and talk to each other. So yes, it's all moving forwards. Now, the other thing that I would like to just say is actually I've just not been able to get hold of the question, so I do apologize about that. I definitely did ask you for questions, and aloha, hi Brian, good to see you. Nice to see you all joining. Thank you very much for coming. So some of the questions I did get, I do remember some of them. So one was about French pronunciation and pronunciation generally and how I work on that kind of thing. So French pronunciation is a particularly weird one because I think that people do find particularly this sound quite difficult, especially from an English speaker's point of view, because it's a bit different. There's a very simple thing that you can do to make the sound, and that is pierce your lips as though you've got a pencil. Even use a pencil or a pen and put it in your mouth. Just do that with your lips and try and say E. And if you try and say E and you're doing this, U, an U comes out instead of an E. So that's a very simple trick for that. And that's the most common issue with French pronunciation that I find with people, that they make this, instead of an U sound, they say OO for everything. And so there's a bit of a difference in French if you say merci beaucoup and merci beaucoup. There's a slight difference. Any French speakers on will know that, yeah, one is. So yeah, the French pronunciation nightmare, I like it. The French pronunciation nightmare. Yeah, it is. So any language that that you want to improve your pronunciation, or you want to your accent, even if you're into getting a better with you, is my experience at university with Swedish, and that was that the teachers took us through an entire year of practicing Swedish before they said we could pronounce it properly. And what we did was we had exercises where we would read words kind of like you see at the start of a book in a pronunciation guide. We had that kind of thing, but it was like expanded into this mammoth thing. And we would actually have to record our voices, listen to the original, listen to what we did, what we said, and see if we could hear the difference. So the first thing to do is to be able to hear the difference. If you can't hear the difference and hear the sounds, it does make it quite difficult to resolve any pronunciation issues, right? So that was the first thing that we would do, and then we would get feedback from a teacher. So it was actually an assistant, so a Swedish speaker would listen to what we'd done, listen to us pronouncing it, and then give us some advice, like where in your throat is the sound coming from? Where is your tongue positioned? Those kinds of things are really important, because if you know that kind of stuff about physical differences between what you're doing inside your mouth, what you're doing with your lips, what you're doing with your tongue, then you can better reproduce the original sound if you ask somebody to just explain where things are. You don't need to talk about the very sort of linguistic terminology of labials and all that kind of stuff. You don't need to worry about that. Just say, describe, is your tongue behind your teeth? Is it touching the roof of your mouth? Is what's happening in your throat? Feel whether there's a vibration in the throat. Those kinds of things will just help you to figure out how to make the sound, and you can then try and. Merci Jean-Baptiste. Ça va bien? Konbanwa. Aha, konbanwa. Konbanwa. Genki desu ka? Nice to see you. Yeah, where am I currently? At the moment, so we're on Skopje. When all this started, I'd just come back from a conference in Edinburgh, so we're kind of stuck here. So yeah, we're just stuck in North Macedonia. We're not able to travel really anywhere at the moment. Okay, the L sounds brilliant in Swedish. Yeah. So there are definitely things that you can do to do with the pronunciation, so that you can improve how you pronounce it. For me, the pronunciation is the important thing. The accent is probably secondary, and simply because if your accent isn't perfect, it's not the end of the world. The important thing is that people understand you when you pronounce something, and that's what hampers pronunciation. If you're pronouncing something incorrectly, then that's a technical thing that you can improve on for sure, and I think everyone can. Some people talk to me a lot about the actually, and many people don't realize this, that in languages like Italian or Spanish, or even my home language of Macedonian, rolling your R is something that some of the native speakers cause, and they try and get better. It's often something that you can either do or you can't do. So there are some people who just can't roll their R's. And in those languages, they can't roll their R's either, but it doesn't mean that they're not understood. Or the weaker R, which is referred to as a weaker R here, which is this R sound. So they'd say, instead of saying dobro, they'd say dobro. And in fact, in Macedonian, there was a lot of people would say, if you can't pronounce your R, then you ended up high up in politics, because there was a time where many of the people in the top positions in government couldn't roll R's. So it was actually the majority of those positions. They were the so they say dobro instead of dobro. So yeah, it's not the end of the world if you can't do things like that. There are other things though that you do need to be able to pronounce properly. In French, this ou and u, that the trick that I gave you before is an easy way to overcome that, and it does make a difference, because there are, especially with the u sound, there are some words that you don't want to be saying in certain circumstances, and actually there are two words that are only divided by those two sounds. So getting that right is fairly important in French. Other sounds though, I think it's understandable when people can't say it. I mean, Greek people have problems with the ch sound, so do Scandinavian speakers. If you listen to them trying to say sh, a lot of them will say a sh sound. So Welsh speakers who are normally not Welsh, they will have a problem with the z sound, so they'll say su instead of zoo. So you get a number of languages, they just don't have certain sounds, and so it's you just have to adapt to the closest you can get. But if a Greek person comes to me and said, I want a cappuccino instead of a cappuccino, I know what they want. It's not like I can't understand cappuccino. It's not the end of the world. Thank you very much. You're doing your German homework. Good stuff on your German homework. I like it. My pearls of wisdom. That's very sweet. I hope that there are some useful tips that I can give you during the. Let me just see if I can answer any of the questions that you do have. It's nice to see you too, Rasmus. Thank you for joining. Do I have any advice on making that feel natural, just hard confidence and making them part of the flow? Luis, actually, you know what? This is something that takes time. It does, and I think I've been through stages where, for example, in my original dialect of English, we have the ch sound. In Scouse, it's called Scouse. So, for example, the word chicken in original way would be chicken. So we do have that sound. So when I learned languages like Spanish or Dutch, they were not so unusual for me. But in Dutch, there's a difference between a ch and a ch and a ch. And I'm not going to be able to make it now. But saying it, for example, a word like Schavenshage, which is the longer name of The Hague in Dutch, it takes practice and it's not the most natural thing in the beginning. Other languages that have consonant clusters as well, like say Slavic languages like Czech, like it's like the Czech tongue twister of sticking your finger through your throat. And there are no vowels in that, so it gets a bit weird. It's a lot to do with sort of playing with the sounds a lot. Prst, 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 and trch, trch, and trying to make those sounds, even when it doesn't make sense. Practicing saying them often will just make it more and more automatic. The more automatic it becomes, the more easily you can then just insert them into certain phrases. So tongue twisters can be good for that. So if you're learning a language where you've got unusual sounds, in Czech the sh sound is very difficult. A number of Czech speakers can't make the sh, and they have to be trained how to say it. So there's a tongue twister in Czech. They do this so that they can practice saying it, and it gets a bit crazy. But I recommend doing things like that, Luis. And one of the things that you find with these consonant clusters is that if you have a language with a number of vowels in it and you're not used to having so many consonants together, I'm guessing that you speak Spanish, Luis, with a name like Luis Gonzalez, and English obviously as well. But with English and Spanish, we're not used to having so many consonants together, and that's true for a number of languages. So there is a tendency for us to insert vowels into the consonants to make them easier to pronounce, and we have to always keep an eye on that to make sure that we can we can control it and get to a pronunciation that's more understandable to locals. Aí, ok. Falo português onde no Frico. Ok. Onde no Brasil mora? Eu não moro no Brasil. Eu moro agora na Macedónia. There are sounds in language that you can't pronounce. I don't know, Roger. I've tried thinking if there's a sound I can't pronounce at all. I've not come across one yet. I definitely need to put my mind to pronouncing something as well, but I've tended to be able to pronounce most things I've come across. Grüße aus Berlin, hallo. Kalispera. Kalispera, wie kann ich? Okay. Moro Norte do Brasil. É você. Ah, isso. Vocês falam juntos. É bonito. Fica lindo isso, sim. Great idea. Okay, you're very welcome. Okay, so I'm seeing if there are questions that I can answer here. I'm happy to answer anything that you've got. Do you like Albanian? Yes, I do. It's one of the languages that we speak in North Macedonia. So in Skopje, it's a particularly prevalent language, and so for me, it's important to speak not just one of the languages, but a number of the languages of the places that I live in or visit frequently. So I like to try and get into as many as possible. Also, I enjoy the exchanges, the linguistic exchanges between neighboring language communities, and I find that a lot with Albanian, Macedonian, Serbian, Turkish, and Romanian and Greek. They're linked quite a lot with words that they've taken from Turkish, and Turkish is in turn taking them from Arabic and Persian, and that's actually one of my pet hobbies is finding out more about the etymologies of these words. I absolutely love it. So I learned Albanian and I enjoy speaking it whenever I can. Can I recommend any Latin learning material books? I can actually. Artist at Work, I can. So for Latin, there is a really cool thing on, even on YouTube, you can find it. I'm just going to find the link to see if I can find it for you. It's a book, and this guy, all of it, and he reads it out. It's super, super cool. Some of it is actually on link as well. And Lingua Latina, what was it called now? I'm going to see if I can find it for you. Oh yeah, here it is, I found it. So it's called Lingua Latina per se illustrata. I'm saying that with a very Italian accent, I don't know why, but it's very difficult for me to read Latin without an Italian, to read Latin without an accent. So basically, it's called Lingua Latina Illustrata. So if you put in, I'm just going to write it in here into the chat, Lingua Latina per se illustrata. This is probably the best book, I think, to get into Latin in a way that's not completely dry and boring. I quite liked it. I've watched a number of these videos and I enjoy them. Yeah, so I hope that helps. Otherwise, the course Ecce Romani I find quite cool, and that's just a book though. But this you can actually listen to Latin, and I enjoy listening to it too. But there are 2 volumes to it. It's really cool. Zdravo, Edward. Kako gre? Sve u redu. Can I recommend some Latin? Yeah, Latin, that's them. Let me see. I'm trying to get back to the other questions. Sorry, I've went up. What happened with Arabic? Are you still studying it? Arabic? No, I've not been studying it for a while, actually. I studied it a few years ago. It was the last time. It was the third and kind of the last time that I studied, but I would definitely get into it again. I feel myself getting closer and closer to Arabic, having done Turkish and I'm still studying Turkish, still learning it actually. I'm still trying to improve my Turkish. I got back to Turkish again before the summer and continuing with Turkish, but also starting with uma dica que falante de português que esteja aprendendo russo. Russo, mas todas as línguas, você tem que praticar muito. Isso é uma coisa, por exemplo, não é somente praticar com a gente, com outras pessoas, mas também estudar a língua com o mínimo, eu acho que 2 vezes na semana. É muito. Também pensar da língua, da gramática que você está aprendendo agora. Então, quer dizer que não sei, trabalhando antes de trabalhar, antes de fazer alguma coisa, até também alguns minutos, não sei, um quarto de hora, ou pode ser também um pouco mais, se você tiver tempo para fazer isso, e pensar na língua mesma, pensar, ativar também a memória de do que você está aprendendo durante as horas ativas da língua, do aprendimento de língua. E depois disso também, se você tem a oportunidade com na aplicação, uma aplicação que se chama Radio Garden, Jardim Rádio, Rádio Jardim, Radio Garden em inglês. Lá você tem também acesso a muitos canais de todo o mundo, na verdade, mas também o russo. Você pode também ouvir, escutar coisas na língua russa mesmo, para praticar a língua, também fazendo outras coisas durante o dia, na casa, tipo assim. E também ler coisas. Se você pode também ler coisas sobre assuntos interessantes para você e também praticar a gramática, assim, olhando também não somente isso do texto, mas também a gramática, as formas gramaticais que estão usando para comunicar as ideias. Isso é uma coisa, um processo muito importante para ter ativamente na cabeça o que está sucedendo na página, também ouvindo a mesma coisa da rádio. Tá bom? Okay. Richard, you're absolute legend. Thank you very much. Bosnian Serbian, hvala ti, tak se mycket. Firstly, ahoj, když budeš dělat video v škotský jazyk. Škotským jazykem, ale já si myslím, že doufám dělat něco asi, nevím, ale udělal jsem něco s italki. To bylo zajímavé, protože mluvil jsem asi, myslím, že to bylo asi 20 jazyků, a mluvil jsem i škotsky. Takže to bude, já doufám, že v tím měsíci to bude hotový. Ale obrigado para o português. Obrigado. Hola, yo tengo 15 años. Espero seguir aprendiendo idiomas. Saludos desde Venezuela. Hola, ¿qué tal? ¿Todo bien? Me alegro mucho. Muchas gracias por escribir. Hallo aus Österreich. Wie oft triffst du auf Leute, denen du auf einer deiner Fremdsprachen helfen kannst, eventuell sogar im Urlaub? Also mittlerweile wohne ich eigentlich in Mazedonien. Also wir sprechen hier, also zu Hause sprechen wir 5 Sprachen. Also mit meiner Tochter sprechen wir Englisch, Französisch, Mazedonisch, Deutsch und Spanisch. Also das ist ja überhaupt kein Problem. Und dann in der Stadt haben wir auch noch Albanisch und Türkisch und dann auch Serbisch, Bulgarisch und Griechisch ab und zu, wenn wir nach Griechenland wieder fahren können. Normalerweise im Jahr fahren wir zuerst nach Griechenland und dann kann ich die Sprachen mindestens ein bisschen üben. Und dann von meiner Arbeitsstelle arbeite ich auch auf verschiedenen Sprachen und dann benutze ich auch die skandinavischen Sprachen zum Beispiel, auch andere slawischen Sprachen auch. Und ja, ich würde so sagen, so war so meine Schätzung so etwa ja 25 oder so. Also im Jahr würde ich dann aktiv sprechen oder benutzen und dann ja bis 30 vielleicht, dass ich vielleicht auch passiv dann benutzen würde. Ja, aber ist es vor, dass ich die Sprachen auch benutze. Und ich mache auch Projekte ab und zu. Zum Beispiel habe ich Indonesisch für ein Projekt, weil ich im Urlaub in Indonesien war und ich wollte die Sprache auch können. Und ja, danke für die Frage. Hej Richard, hur är läget? Ja, bra tack. Hur är läget med dig? Har du studerat japanska? Ja, det har jag gjort. Jag har gjort det i Sverige. Det var för på Dalarna, det var på internet, på nätet. Så jag har gjort bara en semester i Dalarna. Men det var fint. Det var bara för att kunna läsa lite grann, för att förstå hur det fungerar med japanska. För jag visste helt inte hur det var. Och jag hade studerat i Dalarna, så jag hade på universitetet där så 3 semester kinesiska, och jag visste hur det var med kinesiska, men inte med japanskan. Jag visste inte heller hur det fungerar med, som man så borde använda tecken där, så man ser allt kinesiska tecken, eller hur? Men ja, det var jätteintressant. Och så fall, har du några särskilda tips? Ja, jag skulle vilja säga att Dalarna är fantastiskt jättebra. Det är en tip om du vill studera japanska, så Dalarna, så universitetet, så det är faktiskt jättebra. I Sverige finns det så många kurser som man kan göra, och jag har gjort det jättemycket. Jag har studerat på svenska också, men och på engelska. Det finns annorlunda som man har människor från utomlands också studerar på engelska, så det är inget svar. Och på svenska är hellre det på svenska och på engelska. Wahnsinnig vielen Dank. Ja, danke. Ja, gern. Ok. Salut du Portugal. Je n'ai qu'une question pour vous, mais je vais envoyer un email. Ouais, d'accord, c'est sûr. Pour la conférence, il n'y a pas de problème. Merci, c'est gentil. Comme la conférence est sur Internet, cette année, c'est plus ou moins difficile à organiser. En fait, moi, je dirais que il y a des difficultés différentes pour une conférence en ligne. Moi, je dis en fait conférence globale. Et oui, ça pose des problèmes techniques, parce qu'il faut vraiment savoir ce qu'on veut faire et comment organiser ça, en fait, parce que c'est pas tout à fait clair avec les technologies existantes qu'on voit en ligne. Mais c'était vachement intéressant pour moi. J'adore organiser des conférences partout, donc j'ai fait ça c'est un hobby, c'est un passe-temps, mais ça me fait vraiment plaisir, et je suis hyper content que je puisse faire quelque chose cette année en ligne, malgré la situation actuelle avec le virus, et puis avec aussi le Mexique, parce que j'avais vraiment très envie d'y aller. Okay. Let me see if I can see any other things. Okay, I'm seeing if there are any other questions that I can answer for you. Anyone who doesn't understand me at some point, never worry. I will always go back to a language at some point that you will understand. What do I consider to be to develop consciousness upon a foreign language? Oh. Consciousness upon a foreign language. So you mean when you that becomes like a language that's part of you, that you think in and stuff? Yeah, that's a cool question. That comes at different points for different languages, I think. It depends how close to the languages you already speak the language is. And there was definitely a click in my head. I felt it when I learned German. I learned German when I was around, I was like 22 when I learned German, and I really felt this kind of click in my brain where the word order sort of just made sense again. And for a long time, it was kind of, I struggled with this whole, oh no, I should say the verb at the end, and I kept correcting myself and making mistakes. Now it feels quite natural to speak German the way it was, but now it's pretty. It gets there. It just takes time. It depends on the language. Some languages I find I get there a lot more quickly because I already speak a language that's similar. So yeah, preventing mixing up languages that are similar. One of the things that I found, actually, particularly with the example you've given with Spanish and Italian, was that when when I learnt Italian, I learnt Italian after Spanish. I went to Italy to do a course, and there were a lot of Spanish speakers who had very strong Spanish accents in their Italian, and that really helped me to divorce the languages. And I discovered that actually focusing on the pronunciation and the accent was really important. So if you're wanting to make sure you keep them separate, then just focus on being as Italian as possible or as Spanish as possible when you're doing each one. Be very conscious of that. And you'll get a feeling of what sounds right and what sounds wrong. You will still make some mistakes. I mean, I still make mistakes every now and again with them, and definitely, they never end up perfect. None of them ever end up perfect. Even your mother tongue never ends up perfect. So say doing that, making sure you feel confident with your first one, where it's at a level where you feel very, very comfortable, and then start the second one that's similar if you're feeling it's mixing up too much. And then once you have got one at this level and you're bringing the other one up, then start practicing them back to back and forcing yourself into a situation where you need to use them back to back, because that forces you to separate them out. That works for me anyway, so I hope that works for you too. Okay, you remember me from 11 years ago with a different language. Okay, I've got old. Thank you. I would kind of be a bit weird if I didn't get older, baby. But thank you for det är inspiration. Ja, tack så mycket. Imponerad eller inspirerad dig mest. Ja, det är jättesvårt att se. Jag vet inte. Jag tror att för mig, om jag tänker på just nu så skulle jag säga jag sa Emanuele Marini för mig är väldigt bra. Så hur han pratar så många språk, han kan tala jättemycket. Jättebra också. Så han är imponerad som människor som pratar. Så det finns också andra människor som har lärt många språk, som Judith Maja till exempel, som pratar jättebra grekiskan nu för att han hade varit intresserad. Att lära sig mer över situationen med ekonomin i Grekland, så hade han kontakt med Varoufakis, och så det är imponerande hur de har lärt sig ett språk av rent bara intresse. En stort inspiration för mig. Det är svårt att säga allt som jag tänker, men det finns så många, så skulle jag säga tack för frågan. What do I think is Welsh more similar to Breton or Scottish Gaelic? Definitely more similar to Breton, because it's a Brythonic language as well. And when I see Breton written, it doesn't look as strange to me as Gaelic. Gaelic, if I just see Gaelic on its own, I don't really get very much of it at all. Whereas if I see Breton, I've seen Breton written, and it's more similar. It's kind of like, it feels to me that sort of from Welsh, the closest would be Cornish, and then from Cornish it would be Breton, from my exposure to the languages. With Irish and Scottish Gaelic and Manx, then they're all pretty different to Welsh, actually. What's your second strongest Slavic language after Macedonian? Good question. I don't know. Very, very difficult for me to answer that question. We have a lot of Serbian that's spoken here, and we hear a lot of it on TV. So actually listening to Serbian for me is really not a big deal at all. I'm used to watching comedy and like sort of those kinds of hearing jokes and things in Serbian. It's not a problem. I probably feel very confident as well listening to Bulgarian and interacting with people in Bulgarian. We don't hear it as much, but yes, my main Slavic language obviously is Macedonian, but I'd say probably Serbian, Bulgarian would be the ones I hear most. And then but in terms of like what I studied Czech formally and officially, and that's what my advanced diploma is in, although my Czech isn't as good as my Macedonian, of course. But yeah, I mean, I did the advanced diploma in Czech studies many years ago, which is basically at the level that you need to be at to study at university in Czech Republic. And at that time, there were no CEFR levels, so I don't know what level it actually was. Is Latvian grammar similar to grammars of Slavic language? Yeah, there are some similarities between Latvian and the Slavic languages. So they do, some of the way the cases work, for example, feels quite familiar. Some of the numbers feel very familiar. Some of the words as well feel quite familiar. But I mean, remember that the Slavic and the Baltic languages are also separated later. So there were Balto-Slavic, and then they went into Baltic and Slavic. So I think that the relationship is just generally closer. Hallo aus Deutschland. Wie wichtig ist Grammatik für das Sprechen einer Sprache? Ja, ziemlich wichtig. Ich meine, es ist eigentlich wie soll ich so erklären? Ich meine, man muss schon die Grammatik lernen. Ob man das eigentlich also ich würde so sagen, dass man eigentlich die Grammatik ein Teil der Sprachen ist und nicht, dass man Grammatik so wie als Fach so lernt. Man macht das alles gleichzeitig, oder? Und ich würde schon sagen, dass ja, bei mir war es so der Fall, dass ich die Grammatik eigentlich nur so beim Hören, beim Sprechen gelernt habe. Beim Deutschlernen war so. Und ja, also es wird einfach ja ein Teil davon, aber man kann schon und man muss schon auch ein bisschen aufpassen. Das heißt, so wenn man was liest, wenn man was hört, dann muss man auch ein bisschen so die Grammatik analysieren und verstehen, warum man so das macht. Man muss die Logik von der Sprache auch verstehen. Sonst ist es schon schwierig, die Sprache gut zu beherrschen und dann auch weiter auch zu benutzen. Have you studied Sicilian? Yes, no, unfortunately, I haven't studied Sicilian. Maybe one day. Salam, Zara. Let me see. Servus. Yeah, hallo. Pozdrav iz Serbia. Yeah, pozdrav. Do you have any experience with Swedish on Link? Tim, I've used some of the podcasts. So there are a couple of books in Swedish on Link that I've used, and I quite enjoy that. I quite like because Steve is a big Swedish speaker himself. There's quite a lot of stuff on Link for Swedish. So yeah, I'd recommend it if you want to go through it. Any tips on to learn German? Yeah, I think for learning German, focusing on actually what you want to say and not worrying too much about learning the grammar as a sort of a separate thing is important. A language like German, you can see these tables and how many words there are for either and all these kinds of things, and that kind of takes you away from what the important thing is, and that is actually just speaking the language. So learn things in context, learn how to pronounce things and to say things that you want to say. And don't get bogged down too much in the details, and pay attention to grammar, of course, but don't worry too much. There's on Link, there's quite a nice. There's the stories are written all in German. You can try that. They have them. They say them out. So if you go to Link langq.com, you can try that out. There are a number of books as well. I mean, the Teach Yourself book in English. They have German. Colloquial also have German, but there are a number of books for German actually. Thema Neu is one that people use at schools, and then they have. I'm trying to think of the other ones that they use. There are a number of them, but what I'd say with German actually, German, Spanish, French, Italian, Russian, these kinds of big languages that have a lot of materials, I'd say go to your local bookshop or library, sit down and look through the books that they have and just go through and see which ones work for you and you feel you want to work with and you have an interest in. You'll find that books pull you towards them. So do that. It's very important because if you're going to be working with something, you've got to enjoy working with it. Servus, ich hab gerade einen Sohn bekommen und inspiriert von dir möchte ich ihm gern Fremdsprachen beibringen. Aber wie vermeide ich das? Er meine Fehler und ja, okay, perfekte Aussprache lernt. Also das macht eigentlich nichts aus, dass er die Sprache von dir lernt. Ich würde sagen, dass es eigentlich Mehrwert ist, dass das Kind eigentlich eine andere Sprache spricht und weiß und versteht. Ich habe jemanden in Polen kennengelernt, der hat auch dafür entschieden, mit seiner Tochter auf Englisch zu sprechen. Und es war sehr interessant, weil sie eigentlich besser Englisch sprechen könnte als der Vater. Und sie war damals oder 11 Jahre alt, denke ich mal. Aber die sprach Englisch, also trotzdem, dass sie mit ihrem Vater die Sprache gelernt hat, hat sie sehr gut gelernt. Das war ja wirklich unglaublich und ja, dann bitte weitermachen und keine Panik auf der Titanic. Das Kind wird die Sprache lernen und es ist immer besser, ein bisschen von einer Sprache zu wissen, als keine Sprache zu wissen. Also es ist immer wertvoll. Also mach mal weiter. Du machst es gut und das ist wirklich eine Investierung in dein Kind. So, mach mal. Você fala Portuguese in languages, a little bit of Chinese, a little bit of Thai, and I think that's it. Yeah, they're the only ones that I've studied tonal languages. Manuel Marin speaks also Slovene very well. Yeah, he is. He's great. Manuel is brilliant. He's a really nice person as well. I really like Emanuele. He's a really great guy. And your third European language after learning two already. It gets easier because, Ahmed, it gets easier because you already have a number of words that help you to grow. So if you imagine language learning like this, you have your first language. And when you learn a new language, from your first mother tongue or your first language or languages, you already have a base. So that means that you understand a lot of things. You have a writing system, so you understand how writing works. You can read, so you understand how reading works. You also have a number of sounds that you can make and reproduce and understand and hear differences in sounds. So you can work with things like that. You can also understand explanations of how sounds are different. The other things that you have are, you have an innate idea of how grammar works. So you know how we put ideas and sentences together in a language, and you can then basically take that and extrapolate a new way of doing that in another language more easily than, say, a child. It just is something that you can start to understand because you can reason it. Then the vocabulary, you've already built up a lot of vocabulary in one language, and often we'll find in many languages there's a number of words are shared, or concepts, for example, are the same. So the idea of having an idea, the idea of it being important or essential, or done that. So when you come to learn a language, you automatically have a lot of this already in place, which makes this process much faster. Now, the more languages you learn, the more of these layers you can add on. So your starting point is always going to be a little bit higher each time. So yes, it will definitely help to learn more. The more you learn, the more you can learn. Could I speak in English so you can understand? Yeah, of course. I speak in all of the languages, so I will switch. So if I get a question in different languages, I switch. But never mind, if I speak another language, I will always go back to English as my default. It's my original language. Do I have any experience learning Japanese? Yes, I do. I studied Japanese at a Swedish university called Dalarna, and so I did that a number of years ago just to understand how the writing system worked in the beginning, and it was a really good experience. And then when I was in Fukuoka for the Polyglot conference last year, I got to use some Japanese. I also used the Michel Thomas with a basic idea of how Japanese works and some basic vocabulary. So yes. There we go. I speak German, understand German very well, close to 100%, but when I listen to Austrian dialects spoken in the west of Austria, my understanding drops to around 20%. Interesting. It is interesting, Tim. Some of the dialects of German can be quite different and challenging to understand. Do you speak Albanian, Richard? Yes, I do speak Albanian, Wilson Jr. It's one of the languages of the Balkans that I've studied. And friend, please share your thoughts on learning Czech. Learning Czech's a lot of fun. It takes time to get used to all of those consonants together. So practice all of the tongue twisters that you can and learn it. It's a lot of fun though. It's a rewarding language to learn. It was a very good language for me to learn to get into the Slavic languages. I would say that there are easier languages to learn than Czech as a first Slavic language. I would say the easiest one to get into properly and to speak is probably Bulgarian, and then I would say the second easiest after that. This is in terms of like grammar, vocabulary, pronunciation, and materials available and speakers available. So Bulgarian by far, because many people in Bulgaria are very grateful to speak to you in Bulgarian, because their English doesn't seem to be as high as, say, their English level generally isn't as high as, say, in Croatia, or in North Macedonia, or in Serbia, or in a few of the other countries. So for that reason, it's good to learn it. Also, it's a very nice language, and there are a lot of materials for Bulgarian. And then I'd say after that would be Croatian, because Croatian, there are cases, but the cases are pretty regular. As soon as you've learnt how the cases work, the pronunciation, the intonation is pretty regular. You can learn it fairly quickly, and they don't have as many consonant clusters as, say, Czech or Polish or Russian. So it's easier to pronounce as if you speak other Indo-European languages. They would be my first two that I would say. When you get to Serbian, you have to learn the Cyrillic script as well. So that would probably be the only reason why I'd say Croatian over Serbian, for example. And because both of them have got quite a lot of materials that you can use. But I'd say Croatian probably is easier than Serbian because of that. And also Croatian follows, so Croatian and Serbian differ in one of the aspects of grammar where they differ is a Croatian speaker would tend towards a formulation of I want to speak. Hoću govoriti or želim govoriti. Whereas in Serbian you would say hoću da govorim, or I want that I speak, or želim da govorim, I want that I speak. And that's the way you do that in Serbian, but you don't do that normally in Croatian as a standard. And that other way of doing it is more in line with how we would say it in the Latin languages and in the Germanic languages. Ich will sprechen, I want to speak. Je vais, quero falar. So all of those, like southern form, which was used in Bulgarian and Macedonian, and yeah, those languages have this in common, that they follow this pattern of I want, I do, I want, you do, I want, they do, I want, they, whatever. And that's kind of how those languages work. They all work in slightly different ways, but that's how they work. They don't use an infinitive after the first verb. So yeah. Let me see. Have you read Language Instinct by Steven Pinker? I haven't, no, I've not read it. I'll maybe have to make a note of that and see. The Language Instinct. Heard your interview on the Language Mastery Project. Thank you very much. That's very kind on the Language Mastery Project. Great, I'm glad you liked it. What's your favorite language to learn? So my favorite language to learn was probably German, because I learned it as an au pair when I was au pairing for 3 very sweet, very nice girls, and in a family in Germany. And yeah, I think when you learn a language with children, it's very different because they ask you questions, they take you out of your comfort zone with the language, things that you're not expecting to be asked. You know, like, can you do cartwheels? Can you do splits? Do you like to play with mud? They ask you really crazy questions. So yeah, that's probably my favorite because of that. And the family was very sweet. Romanian has been on your to-do list for about 6 years. Oh, you should definitely get to Romanian. Romanian's cool. Yeah, I like Romanian. I don't get to use it very often. In fact, my Romanian probably isn't very good now, but haven't spoken it in years. I'm going to see if there's any more questions here. So how many hours per day should I learn to be fluent in 1 year? So which language you're actually looking to learn? Which languages you want to learn? Because being fluent in a year, and what do you mean by fluent? It's very, there are a lot of things I need to define before I answer a question like that, unfortunately. I can't just give you an answer on how long for any given language. It would depend on so many things. I just found Croats just want to speak English. Didn't have a really good experience. Oh dear, Philip. Yeah, a lot of people in Croatia, they're used to foreigners coming over. They have a big tourism industry, and they're used to speaking English. So Croatians do tend to speak pretty good English. And Serbs too, actually. They do seem to be pretty good. So yeah, actually, all the Yugoslav generally they seem to be pretty good. So the ex-Yugoslav countries tend to be pretty good with English. It's interesting you found Serbians to be more keen to speak Serbian. Yeah, it's. I think a number of times it's because they want to help you and do something more quickly, and they're used to people learning the language. They're used to people saying hello, how are you, thank you, and as a max, and maybe I want a beer. Maybe that's all they're used to. So they're just used to switching automatically. So it feels a bit weird for them to carry on, and they're probably just in a context that they're doing it. I don't know, second guessing. It may not be, it may just be that they really don't like, I don't know. But yeah, often I find that with people in like countries where they do speak English well, it's often because of that kind of thing. They're not trying to be mean, they're just trying to make your life easier, and they think speaking English is part of doing that. It's interesting when you say to somebody you're in that situation, can you, if you say, for example, do you mind if we speak your language? I really like it. I've been learning it for ages and I really like it, and I'd like to get better, and we're in your country, so please. Or look at them surprised that you don't understand what they're saying. Just go, huh? Like you don't understand the English. I've ever tried to do that. I don't want to offend anyone in Skåne. Sæll, þú áfram að læra íslensku? Já, núna ekki. Það fyrir mig ef það fyrir að tala íslensku hérna núna. Það fyrir tala aldrei íslensku. Ég bara á Íslandi og þarna, eitthvað að reisa að vara á Íslandi kannski í sumrin, og ég vil gera það. Ég vil tala með íslensku. Og þú, Vanessa, hvað er þú að læra með íslensku? Ertu á Íslandi núna? Buona tarde, Richard. Buona tarde. Nice to see you. Okay, come va? Tudo bem? Conversational fluency. Okay, conversational fluency in Russian in less than 2 years. Okay, that's pretty cool. Yeah, it's super difficult to explain what fluency is and what to do, but yeah, it takes time. It just takes so much time sometimes. Povej prosim u slovenščini, ali so slovenske gore in jezera lepa. Zelo lepa. Zelo lepa. Tim, do you know what? I love Slovene. It's nice. I love reading it and seeing it and hearing it. I wish I could speak it more here. I don't get to practice it almost at all, actually. It's a language that you don't really hear here. But yeah, hopefully I'll get back into my Slovene. But you're right, they are absolutely beautiful, and I really enjoyed my time in Slovenia. So I would love to go back. Hopefully, after all the crazy ends, I'll get to go back as well. That'll be very cool. So I don't see any more questions for now, and I think I've got to all the end of your questions. So that means I will disappear. and I will let you carry on and enjoy your weekends. ¿Has estudiado algo de idioma vasco? Sí, un poco sí, pero no mucho. Es que hice, no sé, unos 2 o 3 meses, algo así, para estudiar el idioma un poco, pero no lo hablo. No lo aprendí muy bien. A ver si puedo continuar algún día con el vasco, me gustaría. Que mola mogollón, me gusta mucho. Okay, so it was nice to see you all. Thank you for joining me today, and I hope to see you again. I think I'll probably keep this kind of time. So Sunday, I told you all last week that, or the week before, that I can't do Thursdays anymore because I now have classes. So I'll probably do it on a Sunday like this. And yeah, I'll see you all again next week. It was very nice to see you, and thank you very much. Take care, everyone.